Well, last month, the IRS made a legal filing arguing religious leaders could endorse political candidates in houses of worship without losing their tax-exempt status, officially breaking a decades-long legal precedent preventing churches and nonprofits from endorsing officially political candidates. While the move by the IRS applies across the country, Texas, with more than 200 megachurches, will be the main stage for this new ruling to unfold. And joining us today to learn a little bit more about it, we have legal expert Jeremy Rosenthal from TexasDefenseFirm.com to help us understand the legal lens of this new ruling. Jeremy, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so last month, the IRS, they reopened a lawsuit from an evangelical media group. It involves two Texas churches who sought to argue that the Johnson Amendment infringed upon their right to free speech and religion. For those of us who don't know what the Johnson Amendment is, can you explain to us why that's important here?
Well, Texas's own senator at the time, Lyndon Baines Johnson, he was getting targeted by a nonprofit. And I don't even know that it was a church or anything like that, but the Johnson Amendment said that that nonprofits can't engage in any type of political activity or necessarily directly try to endorse or influence an election or such. And so it's been interpreted over the years. The IRS has taken that to mean that if you endorse or that if you utilize a 501c3 or a church to try to either endorse or mobilize politically in any way, that you could lose your tax-free exemption that you get as a 501c3. In reality, I believe only one church, really since the Johnson Amendment in the 1950s, lost their status for that. So not a lot happened, but churches didn't feel free to necessarily politic as they felt like they should.
So then does this ruling from the IRS kind of toe that line? We always hear about the separation of church and state, or does this kind of create a new legal gray area?
Well, it creates a new gray area, really, because one of the reasons the Johnson Amendment had been upheld by the courts was that the courts said, look, the government has a vested interest in making sure that nonprofits aren't these backhanded political sort of agents. And that's where the free speech issue sort of kind of collides with it. And what happened in the cases that you referenced earlier is the IRS and these churches came to a settlement, and the settlement still has to be approved by the judge. That settlement, fundamentally, what it says is a couple things: that churches can endorse political candidates if and when they do so, they have to do so in their language, sort of like a familial setting, in a family setting. In other words, it's got to be a part of the church's normal activities during a service or during some type of group setting. The church would violate still the Johnson Amendment if perhaps they passed the hat around and said, well, we're going to run an ad for Greg Abbott if we all pass the hat around and put money in there. Church can't do that. But they can make endorsements, and they can speak a lot more openly about these types of endorsements if they so choose.
We mentioned that lawsuit in Texas. We know Texas will be a proving ground for a lot of this, but also just in New York, we just saw more than 100 faith leaders endorse Mayor Eric Adams for re-election. And as the midterms are coming up across the country, do you think that this is going to change the way that a lot of candidates run their campaigns, maybe how they solicit fundraising?
I don't know that they necessarily will. Maybe. Again, going back to it, the Johnson Amendment was a bit of a toothless tiger because it was never really enforced anyway. So people who were trying to comply with it or not being political for those reasons were afraid of something that was more of a ghost than anything else. There's been a lot of political activity with churches. A recent Pew poll over the last 2 or 3 years still suggests the vast majorities of Americans are uncomfortable with this. Even Republicans, even evangelical Christians, are more than 50% of them are uncomfortable with these types of things. So it could still be radioactive. Some of the major churches, I believe the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, have already come out and said, we're not going to be doing anything like that. I don't know that they can control smaller denominations. I don't know that it's going to fundamentally alter or change these things. But I think, if anything, churches will probably feel a little more free to express themselves.
Jeremy Rosenthal from TexasDefenseFirm.com. Thank you so much for your time today.
Have a great day.